The Suicide Squad appears to have succeeded when it comes to quality. The bad news is this one doesn't seem to be making any money.
CDC forecast says COVID hospitalizations could quadruple by Labor Day.
Overflow tents erected in Houston, and in North Texas, the region down to only 2 pediatric ICU beds.
Suicide Squad had a pretty underwhelming opening weekend at the box office.
I don't see James Gunn getting any more big budget movies outside of Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3.
He told me that, his vision was for me to be Abner Krill, the Polka-Dot Man. I was like, James, I told him, I was like, I'm really embarrassed. I just don't know much about Abner and the Polka-Dot Man.
The top 10 worst DC supervillains. Number 3, Polka-Dot Man.
I never gave Margot Robbie a dead rat.
We're getting another fucking Batman with Robert Pattinson now.
Yeah, another Spider-Man movie.
Yeah, and then it's like, I'm so much more excited about Polka-Dot Man.
It's just a rash. That's a rash.
We could burn it down, 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 down. Look at what we found. For you, I'm always down, 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 down. We could burn it down, 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 down.
The sequel to the most hated DC movie of all time is finally here. All you have to do is put a "the" in front of it, and now WB can just act like it's the first one. It's the Suicide Squad. Unless it performs poorly at the box office, then they'll revert back to calling it Suicide Squad 2. Jared Leto's missing presence is felt throughout the entire movie because no one is overacting except John Cena. Or should I call him John Cena? And how am I supposed to understand these characters' motivations and backstories without it being branded directly onto their foreheads? Well, the answer is you tell a concise and complete story without WB butchering it to hell and try to look like Deadpool. The Suicide Squad stars every character normal people have never heard of before in the Joker's girlfriend. Does that explain why it's a box office flop? Who knows? Literally blame it on whatever you want. Personally, I'm blaming it on the Taliban and the lack of Jared Leto. Here's a fun fact. When we started bombing the shit out of that country in October 2001, the top performing movie in the box office was American Pie 2, and it grossed $143 million in the US. The Suicide Squad won't even come close to that number, and it's 20 years later, so I guess the Taliban kind of won two wars here. I would call the Suicide Squad one of the greatest box office comic book flops I've ever seen. This movie works for a lot of reasons, but it also failed spectacularly financially for one reason. It's missing one key ingredient that would turn this whole ship around. But before we talk about that, let's talk about a lot of people's new favorite superhero, the Polka-Dot Man. You know, Spider-Man was an unlikely hero when he was first introduced too. That's what made him so popular. He was a kid compared to other heroes, and he had normal problems, until you realize that all of Spider-Man's modern day problems are based on what was going on in 1962. Shit is like so fucked up now. I feel like mine and Spider-Man's problems are so far removed from each other. Honestly, I think some of us got it worse than Spider-Man. I'm not gonna lie, I know a lot of people that would trade places for this. Or even this. Remember when Spider-Man showed up to 9/11? I want them to write a comic about Spider-Man showing up to a fiery but mostly peaceful protest. Or a comic about Spider-Man fighting people hand to hand on the steps of the Capitol on January 6th. You want to know why they won't do that? Because Spider-Man can't deal with our fucking problems anymore. We're dead to him now. 9/11 was it. Alright, he's too busy. He doesn't want to get involved in this shit.
Thank you, Heavenly Father, for gracing us with this opportunity.
This is getting farther and farther away every decade from someone that you can relate to. This Spider-Man was worried about getting a date for Homecoming. When I was in high school, I was worried if Clayton was still selling Xanaxes in the bathroom. I can only imagine how much worse American high school has gotten. I always had a vision of a superhero that actually deals with the most terrible shit young people have to deal with. Like drug use, alcohol abuse, addiction, depression, domestic violence. I think out of every DC and Marvel hero on screen, the Polka-Dot Man comes the closest to dealing with any of these problems. Even though it's the most boring one, but it still worked in the movie. We're talking about depression. Now, depression is something that I've never heard of before, but apparently it's this thing where you don't feel good and doing drugs doesn't help. Sounds like something that can be cured by going to the gym. But in this movie, it's a little beyond curable. They don't let you know that by tattooing it onto his forehead.
We're all gonna die.
I hope so.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
James Gunn shows his depression by telling you the story of Abner Krill's tragic past. Usually in a movie you want to show and not tell. And James Gunn breaks that rule here, but he also kind of flips it on its head. Instead of showing Abner Krill's horrific past, he delivers the news to the audience at the same time he tells the squad. So we get to have the same reaction as the squad, disbelief that a mother would do this to her child. But then at the last second he does show. He shows us his current point of view. Instead of a flashback to his tragic past, he shows us the inescapable agony that he's constantly in. So we get to experience the reaction to hearing this horrible explanation to why he is the way he is, and then we also get to experience it firsthand by seeing his point of view. James Gunn uses other ways to show Abner Krill's mental burdens by also bringing it physically to the surface. They use body horror in the shot, and it looks absolutely horrifying to go through. I can see one of the dots glowing through his mouth. Alright, so that means the dot is like poking out inside of him too. Ugh. But he also has to go through something that is a lot more common with people that have body issues, and that's public humiliation.
It's happening to his face again.
Hey, Norman Bates. That shit's contagious, we need to know.
David Dastmalchian actually related to this character more than James Gunn could have known. Growing up, he had spots on his skin that even looked like real polka dots. This made David very insecure as a child, and he struggled with feeling like he was good enough into his adult years. This real-life experience makes David's performance as the Polka-Dot Man feel that much more genuine. In terms of casting, they could have not picked a better actor. My only complaint is that he was not in more of the movie. Altogether, his screen time was probably pretty low, but he left one of the biggest impacts in the movie. He even adopted a cat on set. Every depressed person I know owns a cat. After watching several of this man's interviews, you can tell he's just a fan basically living the dream. He played the Joker's henchman in The Dark Knight, and he created a whole backstory for himself and gave himself tics that he picked up from working with the Joker that appear in his performance. But Polka-Dot Man is suffering from a lot more than just depression. After speaking with a psychologist friend of mine, he bored me half to death, but he informed me that Polka-Dot Man is possibly suffering from schizophrenia, psychosis, post-traumatic stress disorder, suicidal thoughts, and the list goes on. Which explains why he's constantly picturing his mom as everyone. I love the fact that for his mom, they found a woman that has that arm fat, that tricep arm fat that just kind of dangles there. It's just like a nice subtle touch for someone that would just totally be a mental nutcase Karen. They would definitely have that dangly arm fat. But for as fucked up as the Polka-Dot Man is, he's actually not a bad guy. Sure, he's in prison, most likely because the system failed him, but we catch glimpses that Abner Krill is actually a good man.
I don't like to kill people, but if I pretend they're my mom, it's easy.
She was a really nice guy, and he sacrificed himself to help us.
Polka-Dot Man is that guy in your friend group that speaks up and makes sure you can finish what you were saying after you're interrupted. This whole scene with Milton is hilarious, but Gunn is also showing us something here. The fact that Abner is so upset that Milton is dead shows that he is the most human out of everyone in the squad.
When did this great love affair with Milton start?
I liked him from the beginning, okay? I just didn't say anything.
We need more comedy like this in comic book movies.
Who's Milton?
Fuck! He has been with us the whole time!
It's not Deadpool comedy, it's not Marvel comedy, so in my opinion, that makes it fresh. I mean, I guess it's a little bit like Deadpool, but whatever. Why didn't the Polka-Dot Man have childhood trauma tattooed on his forehead? Because that would be fucking stupid. Alright, that makes absolutely no sense to just start tattooing characters' backstories on their heads without showing us what actually happened in the movie. Anyone who wants more of this is a sick fucking weirdo. You would have to be messed up in the head like something is physically wrong with your fucking brain if you want them to release the Ayer cut. I've read the leaks. None of it makes any fucking sense. How can a king have a vice president? Plot hole number 1, and I barely started digging. So with the Suicide Squad 2, instead of tattooing things onto their actors, they just decided to tell it in a movie because it's a fucking movie and not a book or some kind of weird body art expression exhibit in New York. People don't like to read, alright? This is fucking America. And if they release the Ayer cut, I swear to God, I'll make a 30-minute breakdown video analyzing every frame that has Jared Leto in it. I need to do a little public service announcement about my Spider-Man rant. Spider-Man is still one of my top 2 favorite superheroes, and nothing's gonna change that. And I know Spider-Man has gone through some terrible shit before that I didn't mention, like shooting radioactive cum into Mary Jane's vagina and killing her, and Gwen Stacy being a skank and fucking Norman Osborn. The point I'm trying to make is that it would be cool to see a more realistic, down-to-earth superhero that does drugs and drinks booze and hates themselves. I appreciate James Gunn's Polka-Dot Man because it's a fresh take on a superhero in a giant budget comic book movie. It's 2021. If you told me they were making a movie with 3 Spider-Mans in it, I would say yeah, no shit. But if you told me they were finally gonna make a superhero that was depressed as fuck and wanted to die, I would tell you it's about time the industry caught up to the rest of us. And if there's anyone in my comments that is trying to tell me that Batman and Iron Man also have mental health issues, let me just kindly remind you that those guys are rich as fuck. You don't have any actual problems when you're a billionaire. You just get bored and create your own problems. Unfortunately, the star power of Polka-Dot Man, Peacekeeper, Bloodsport, Rick Flag, and Harley Quinn were not enough to sell this movie in theaters. But I think I know how to solve all of this. You fucking put Jared Leto in it. What is with you people not wanting to see more Joker? Don't you understand you're all going to be dead someday? Some of us sooner than others. So why not spend the last few decades of your life enjoying as many Jokers as you can? Put Joker in this movie. You can watch Harley get railed out by this guy. You already made him a cuck Joker once, why not try it again? Release the Ayer cut. Put Joker in Aquaman 2. How about we make a movie called Joker No Way Home, and we'll start by digging up Jack Nicholson's turkey body, putting CGI shit all over his face, and then having him fight Heath Ledger's corpse.